Welcome to another episode of Tzuzamen. Hi, Tzipi.
Hi, Tzili.
And tonight there's an opening for a new play in New York, which called October 7th. Was written by Phelim McAleer. Say hi, Phelim, so we know who you are.
Hello, and great 10 out of 10 for pronouncing my name properly.
Oh,
And one of the actors, René Ifrah, we'll talk about this name later. Phelim, you're Irish. Nobody in Ireland likes us, the Israelis. How come? How come did you write about us?
Good question. Well, I'm a journalist, right? Which I probably, transcends nationality. I mean, Ireland is a strange place at the moment. Why did I write about you? We saw this story that had to be told. We're journalists. It wasn't being told. In fact, it was the opposite of being told. It was being suppressed and ignored. And this is sometimes Israelis or Jewish people don't see this properly because they're looking at all the videos, they're watching, listening to all the interviews, they're living it every day. But the world is trying to move on. People need to know this. The world is trying to move on. They want to talk about October 8th. They want to talk about Gaza. They want to talk about the electricity being turned off, the ceasefire, all that. And no one wants to talk about October 7th. And you're not allowed to talk about October 7th. How dare you? And when I saw that, I thought, no one tells me what you can and can't talk about. No one tells me to ignore the biggest story since 9/11. I think, one of the biggest stories.
I have to tell you something about it, because this is there was a point, and Ireland is a long time, against Israel, but
Yes.
there was a point just after the attack of October 7th that everybody felt for us. It took exactly 3 days. Once we started to fight back, the whole thing changed and everybody were against us. Now, don't get us wrong, because we both for ceasefire. We cannot stand what's going on in Gaza. But in 3 days, the whole world forgot what happened to us and just moved to the other side. What happened?
I think you're being optimistic there. I don't think it was 3 days. We were in Ireland when it happened. On October 8th, a very good person we know, a very good person, right, said, did you hear they're going to turn off the electricity in Gaza?
October 8th.
Yeah.
Day after.
Mm-hmm. And maybe it was October 9th, but it was not 3 days after. So and Ireland now, as you say, Ireland has a special place in this pantheon. So maybe the rest of the world took a little longer to move on, as they say. So look, that's just, it's partly we're journalists, we have to tell the story. Partly we realize it was a story that wasn't being told, and we're not for profit, journalism enterprise. It's called the Unreported Story Society, and we take that very seriously. We tell the stories that no one else tells, and so that's our mission. And it was a pleasure and an honor to tell these stories. It was fact, but it wasn't even an honor. It was what we do. It's what we're set up to do. Why wouldn't we? What journalist wouldn't want to tell these stories? That's what I think.
Did you come to the region because you collected quite a bit of stories, and we, the Israelis,
we knew all the stories when we listened, almost.
I was surprised how much you knew.
Well, no, we went to Israel for 3 weeks in November, interviewed about 20, maybe over 20 people. We narrowed it down to about 13 stories, which you saw on stage. It was hell narrowing it down. It was hell. I mean, cutting these people's stories was so tough, and trying to keep the.
We were very successful.
Oh, thank you. I mean,
I want to ask. Successful without going too much, so you cannot hear it, because you can't hear it, and you get the feeling of what was going up to a point, because of course I don't think you ever can transform anybody to feel the real thing.
The timing was wonderful. I think it's almost like you measured what was the point when it's really the container was full, right? The emotional container of the audience was full, and you knew, it's almost like you knew when.
Well,
and you went on to the after, you know.
The actors now had a lot to do with it, and the director too. I just put the words out there. They responded. You know, they made it what it is, really. So,
but you know, the actors, and you know, like it was clear that they live at the moment, every moment of the whole show. I mean, they were there at the moment, and with the sound, you know, you put us in the middle of the action, and it was like one big, almost entity. Us, the actors, the sound, the stage, the movement. It was really very effective for, you know, unbelievably effective.
René, how did you get to this project?
Came out of the blue, really. I just got a text message from my manager, Robin Bluestone, and she said, listen, I have an offer for you for this play. And I mean, since October 7th, I became more Jewish than I've ever been in my life. So, and immediately was in chats with people, predominantly because of what we're talking about here. It wasn't so much the events of October 7th, which I think anyone in their right mind would always expect could happen if you allowed it to happen. It was the shock of the response to it, literally a day after, that I did not see coming. And I'm a person who sees themselves as being very savvy, very well read, very, you know, with his ear to the ground to kind of know what's going on. I did not expect that kind of response and where it was coming from. And, you know, ironically, I had just done a movie in Europe about the Auschwitz trials. So I was right in the middle of reliving all of that and talking about, you know, Holocaust. I played a Holocaust survivor in the camps. And to witness that kind of rage and anger from people who, you know, are coming from like the most elite universities, and where you would think, okay, you can't have the excuse that they're not well educated, well read. It's the best, you know, education you can buy in the world. That's what was shocking. That it was coming from the left was very surprising. And my manager sent me a text message and said, listen, you know, I was thinking about this. I wasn't sure if it's too soon, but then I said, why too soon for what? And she said, I think this would be a great opportunity for you. And I jumped at the opportunity because I felt hamstrung the entire time, witnessing the misinformation that I'm witnessing all around, and how it's just being allowed to be spread, and felt very helpless and isolated and alone. I feel Israelis and Jews did not get an opportunity to mourn at all. They were immediately labeled as the perpetrator rather than the victim. Yeah, this was just an amazing opportunity that just fell in my lap, and I said, of course, anything I can do to add a voice to this. And it's not about the fact that it's Jews or Israelis. It's just about
people,
humanity. Yeah, people. And that the narrative around humanity is completely turned on its head right now.
So who is doing because, you know, journalism changed in the last, I don't know, 20, 25 years, maybe. This is most journalists, I don't speak about you, Phelim. Phelim?
Yeah.
It's not, but generally, it's not anymore. We are here to give information about what's going on, about what's happening. Journalism became something else, especially in America. They became like opinion, you know, kind of shaping opinion or framing, you know, reality. But even though, so I'm a professor at NYU, New York University, and I really know that most of the students don't even know what they're talking about. So they get their information from the social media. Social media is not even journalism as we know it now. So here you are, a journalist. You have to compete with so many streams of misinformation, of bias, of preconceived ideas, of distorted, etc. I don't know how can you break through except doing what you're doing, for example, with display.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I wonder, did journalism change, or are we looking back with rose-tinted glasses? I don't know the answer to that, right? But I do know, I think it was, I remember really it was around the Yugoslav Civil War. We started this thing of journalism of attachment, where you'd go and you'd sort of attach yourself to a side, and tell the story of the Kosovans or the again the Serbs. You have a designated enemy and a designated good guy, and you tell the good guy's story, and the other guy's the bad guy. I do remember that was a big change, and there was an actual name for it, the journalism of attachment. So look, I don't know if I'm in competition with anyone. We just tell our stories and tell the truth. And I have a question for René. When you saw this play come in called October 7th with a guy with a very Irish name, did your eyebrows raise and go,
No, not at all. Not at all. As a matter of fact, I see it as a bonus because you have some distance to it,
No,
and
when you saw the front page, you're going, this is written by an Irish guy. What rubbish is
Irish
this?
and not Jewish,
Yes.
apparently.
no, boy, I don't know why, but no, that wouldn't pop out at me. I don't, I look at what's on the page and I
Okay.
see what you attempted to do. And what was important to me that there wasn't any kind of ideological tint to it. These are just the verbatim accounts of people, human beings
Except
who
one
suffered.
sentence. Except one sentence, which I'm going to, the sentence that says that we have the right to be there. We got it from the Torah, whatever. It's like it was given to us. I was surprised.
Right.
I was
But
surprised
that,
to put it in.
and I'll let
something like
Phelim
this.
speak to that, but that is just what that character said. It's not something that Phelim put in there as a political point of view. It's, Israelis are diverse. There are some Israelis who believe this. There are some other things that some of the characters say that might not be very flattering. And I think if Israelis have one problem in history, it's they're not very good at PR. They're very honest, very straightforward, very blunt, and they don't understand how they can be misunderstood.
Yeah, they don't believe they need PR.
But I think,
they are right.
I think that Phelim was trying to balance all the information and report in a sense that everybody had his ideas, his feelings out there, so everybody gets an equal picture of the situation. And part of the people are Orthodox, and many people usually after times like this go back to Orthodoxy or to spiritually, or they're really more gentle about this issue. So I think
extreme actions and extreme experiences tend to lead people to other extreme actions. I have family in Israel that were absolute peaceniks, leftists, that after the Second Intifada became Orthodox Jews. It's out of fear. It's out of a lack of control. Out of you try to find some reason, some order in the chaos.
Right. Yeah.
I think it happened after wars, and unfortunately we had plenty. It's only fair to show it. We don't like it, but it's only fair to show it. But René, where did the name Ifrah come from? Because it's a Hebrew name.
It's a very, and you
René is
pronounce
the woman name. René is a woman name.
Who are you?
Who are you?
Well, actually, that's incorrect. René with one E originally is a men's name. It's a French men's name.
Okay.
So an old-fashioned name, as I'm constantly being told by my cousins in Paris, but men's name nonetheless.
Phelim, can you hold steady? You're with an iPhone?
No,
No,
I'm on the laptop. Okay.
With
It's
iPhone.
like shaking, and
I'm just
like
steady
your
now.
actors, like dancing in Nova.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. Go.
No, so my dad was born in Casablanca, Morocco, and he's one of the almost 50% of the Israeli population of Mizrahi Jews, and moved to Israel when he was 10 with his older siblings. His mom and another sister stayed behind, and went to a kibbutz, expecting to see his mother and sister in 6 months. But then, because of the wars, his mother and sister were left behind in Morocco and couldn't leave for another 6 years. Then he was reunited when he was 16, and very sad at the fact that he couldn't even communicate with his mother, because at that point he'd forgotten how to speak Arabic or French, and could only speak Hebrew, and they couldn't communicate. But so the name is a Sephardic name. It means, and you know this, happiness or opening flower. It has different meanings. Yeah, that's where the name comes from. And
yeah,
Pops was a
Where did you
singer, as
grow
you
up?
know, in Israel.
Where did you grow up?
So I was born in Frankfurt, Germany. My parents met. My mother's German, but they met in Israel. My mother came to Israel first as an au pair for a British family, and then stayed. She modeled for a brief time. She was even a stand-in for Romy Schneider on a movie with Richard Harris and stuff. And she's a very beautiful woman,
Wait,
and got a lot of attention as a gingy, a woman in Israel. And my dad in the nightclub singers. My father was a singer. He was one of the lead singers of Harayot, which is the Lions.
Okay.
His manager at the time was Chaim Saban.
Yeah.
And he did, he worked at the Don Hotel and all those other, fancy places back then.
You got
he saw my
everything.
mom.
You got your talent and the beauty from each side. That's nice.
There you go. Yeah. And they met. And when I was conceived, my mom went back to Germany. My father left and went to America and tried for a career here, and said he'll come back when he has a citizenship 5 years later. And he actually kept his word. But in that time, I grew up in Germany with my mom in Frankfurt, and my grandparents on my mother's side lived in Sicily. So we spent half the time in Sicily, half the time in Frankfurt. And once my dad came back, we moved to Brooklyn when I was 10 years old.
Wait, so you had some
1982.
journey. Unlike, I guess, Phelim, you were born in Ireland, right?
Yes. Yeah,
In
born in Northern Ireland, was a journalist in Northern Ireland during the Trouble. But I'm very experienced with conflict and war, and I was a war journalist really for the first 10 years of my experience, so maybe that's why I did it too, maybe because I understood the need for truth in difficult times. You talk about people going to extremes or whatever. That's when you really need the truth. You don't need to sugarcoat anything, and so that was very important. We went there, we interviewed 20 people. We've taken their stories, about 13 of the stories, boiled it down to a play. It's just an hour and a half. Some of the stories are interconnecting.
Yes,
some of them are standalone. It's a bit like the movie Crash, where
exactly.
the all start off and
Right.
they all come together at the end.
Right.
But every word on this stage behind me, every word is verbatim. Every word came out of an interviewee's mouth.
No, we could detect
there's
it. I mean, no, I don't. She also, but I'm 24/7 here in New York, except when I teach. I'm on the Israeli television. So all this, I mean, I saw stories, almost all of them. But what I wonder, before you went to Israel, did you make a research about the conflict and the history of what's happening between, what is it? What is it?
Yeah, it's funny.
Complexity.
I don't think I need to know the history of the Israel-Palestine conflict to write this play. This play is about October 7th. This play is a moral play, actually, about the massacre of men, women, and children. And I don't care if the Israelis hurt your dog or your child or were involved in X, Y, or Z. There's a moral issue. Do you support the massacre and the hunting and massacre of men, women, and children? Do you support that? Is that a good thing? Should we be talking about that? Is this relevant to what happened in Gaza afterwards? And yes, it is. So therefore, there was a ceasefire on October 6th, right? There was peace in Israel and Gaza on October. So this is about October 7th. So I don't need to know.
Yeah. No, they kept sending.
I don't need to know about the first Intifada, the second Intifada, the Oslo peace accords. Look,
Right.
It's about the massacre, the hunting down, the predatory hunting down and massacre of men, women, and children.
Right.
For some actions, there is no justification.
Yes,
It's
yes.
just, yeah, I mean,
Oh, the
So I don't-
intent is
Um,
very clear. It's very clear, the intent. And I think you know, in spite of my question, I didn't mean that you'll go back to the whole history and stuff like this. I just wanted to know how close you were, even as a journalist.
Look, I mean, I'm a journalist, so I would have had perhaps more than normal knowledge of Israel and Palestine, and especially growing up in Northern Ireland, there was a big connection between the IRA and the PLO, right?
Right,
So
right.
it would be Palestinian speakers coming across to speak in Ireland, and IRA people going across to Lebanon and places like that. So I would have had a bigger knowledge of Israel and Palestine than the average person in Ireland and possibly the average person in America. Like I would, as a journalist, I just would have picked it up in the soup of things. But
I'm
you
curious.
know,
No,
go ahead.
I'm
No,
curious.
go ahead. Yeah.
While you were talking to the people in Israel, did anybody mention anything about how they feel about the other side? Was it raised? Did you ask them, or you were talking only about what took place?
It's one point of view. No.
Their opinion about
Opinion. I'm not talking about the play now. I'm talking about your personal experience meeting these people. Did anybody talk about what's going on the other side?
But he came before it was known how many people.
No,
the war was I was there in November, and the war was probably, I can't remember if it had started or not, but
it did quickly.
Yeah, but
quickly.
The numbers didn't.
No, I mean, look, this is October 7th, right? That's the name of the play. It's not called October 8th, although, you know, it's not called The War in Gaza.
She just asked your opinion.
I'm just asking I'm just curious.
Your perception.
I'm
Did
curious.
you feel the Israelis even care about, forget the play now.
Yeah.
In terms of, do you think, or whatever you think about, do the Israeli really care what happened in Gaza? Or they are too much absorbed in this horror that we
I think they don't care. I think their sympathy for the Palestinians in Gaza is very limited. I really do. Now, that was look, I was dealing with people who were literally in the front line, right, at their families. And from what I could see, there was limited sympathy for the plight for the Palestinians.
So do you think it's because they were in the midst of being completely with the horror that happened and the shock and the post-trauma? How can you even can look somebody else? I mean, I think it's imminent, or do you think it's imminent that we really don't care about what happened in Gaza, even now?
I think on a human level, if I could interject, when you are confronted with such a lack of empathy as was exercised by the perpetrators of October 7th, it's very hard to then find empathy in your heart for them. Mm-hmm. The thing that was so shocking, it wasn't just that people die every day. In wars, it's just numbers. Death is death. But when you see the intent and the execution of it and the pamphlets that they found on dead terrorists with instructions on how to create the most suffering, the most psychological damage, this is something, yes, like on a level of ISIS. It's beyond just a military action. It's such a lack of empathy that I can understand when people say, well, why are we constantly the ones asked to have empathy for them when this is what they do to us.
You know, René, it's very delicate and it's very complicated. I was there when the war broke, and the first few days we were in shock, just in pure shock. And then when the information started to come out, it was even shock with disgust, with the desperation. I mean, it was really hard. Mm-hmm. And then over time I was there again, and I noticed about two major things that took place in Israel. Everyone were heartbroken in a sense that all their ideas, ideals, intention about Israel it broke their heart, and they were desperate, and each one reacted according to his age or generation. But this was something that broke everybody. The other thing was it's like there was a wall that you didn't see, that the other side did not exist. And we had
the other side exists.
Yeah, it exists, but you don't want anything to do with what's taking place there. And this is the first time, I'm an Israeli, this is the first time that I saw something so vast, that it's so bad.
Can I just interject? I mean, the one thing I noticed, and it's there, is that, one theme of the play is that people have lost faith in, not lost faith, but their faith in Israel has been shattered. Their faith in Israel was the most secure.
Each one of
we're all
like we don't know how to reclaim what we had, even in terms
of sense of security.
A sense of security. So therefore,
not only and values,
the whole package.
It's the whole package. It's like we lost everything we believed in because of it's not just security in the army. It's much more. Nobody cares about us suddenly.
I think the problem with the narrative right now is that everyone wants to portray Israel as having absolutely no empathy. And I think the problem that I see here is that despite everything, and what I mentioned about the empathy or lack of empathy wasn't as a justification, so they do this to us, so now we get to do that to them. I didn't mean that. I think in the wake of everything, Israel, and this is the story that's not being told either, is still in the Israeli army trying their utmost best, as far as I understand, to combat this situation. And it's a military campaign, but with still maintaining their empathy, which is an incredibly difficult balancing act, given the scope of this and in the wake of what happened. And I don't think Israel gets enough credit for that. There are so many voices that are just so eager to depict Israel as a monster, a cold-hearted monster, and the Palestinian side as humans. They're the humans. They're the, and it's both humans. And it's been said so much, but nobody mentions the fact that the monsters here is not the Palestinian people. It is Hamas. It is this Islamicized fundamentalism
between Palestinians and Hamas. Unfortunately,
it's one.
Yeah.
Yes, and that they have a policy of human shields, of human sacrifice, and they openly tell the world, we will sacrifice our people. They're trying to blackmail Israel, which is a Western army, a Western state that adheres to the Western rules of combat, but with an enemy that says, we don't care.
Guys,
what do you do with that?
Unfortunately, I have to go to another interview now.
But I need 2 minutes from you. That's it. Okay. This is your first play?
No, I did other verbatim plays. I did a play about Ferguson, the shooting of Michael Brown, but I used trial transcripts, the grand jury transcripts. I've done other verbatim plays. So this is it's a very much a British thing, the verbatim idea, where you use trial transcripts or actual interviews. Every word.
Don't fictionalize it, right? It's not fictionalized.
No fictional, no added drama, no editorializing.
Right.
It has restrictions, but it's also very liberating. It means the audience are listening really carefully because they realize every word that comes out of René's mouth is an actual real person's voice, and that's amazing.
So you should know. I mean, I told you in the beginning, it's very effective and very important. It's unbelievable. This voice should be heard everywhere.
We're taking it to the campuses. We're taking it to the Ivy Leagues in the fall. Columbia, Harvard, all those places. They're going to hear it. It's October 7, theplay.com. If anyone wants tickets, it's running until June 16th. I hope you continue the conversation after this opening tonight. So I have to go and prep the opening.
Good luck.
Thank you for coming. And just that you will know that you did a fantastic, service.
Well, thank you.
I'll see you later, Phelim.
Almost like a mission. Okay. Thank you for coming.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Wow.
So it's just us three little chickens now?
Just you and us, not for long, because we have another one, but yeah.
No. Only us. We don't have another one with him.
No, I said later.
I
And
know,
soon.
I
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah. So, what you do is really, this is what you do. You're an actor full time, right? Or
Yeah,
try.
I mean, I've been acting for 35 years. I mean, I had
Oh,
my first
look.
professional job when I was 25. I'd always wanted to be an actor since we came to this country. I also went to LaGuardia High School of Performing Arts
Okay.
for a
My daughter
stint,
also
but
went to
dropped out.
ballet.
Oh, yeah.
She was a
Yeah,
kid.
I ended up dropping out very early just because the commute was just too much from South Brooklyn all the way there. And but yeah, I've pretty much only pursued this since as far back as I can remember.
René, how is the audience react to the show all the time?
It's hard to get a read on that. We've only been in preview so far, so you see mixed, you see tears. One show we saw a couple actually snoring in the front seat, which
Oh my God.
you don't expect.
So-
Seat.
They were a bit older.
all
They
these
were a bit
bullets.
older. Maybe they were past their bedtime. But generally speaking, people are very moved, very
How can
affected, and come
how
up
can
to
they
us.
fall asleep with all this shooting?
You have to ask them.
They didn't have the
Unbelievable.
hearing
They
aid.
didn't have an hearing aid.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
No problem.
But yeah, and I've not had the opportunity to talk to too many audience members yet.
I saw
Tonight's
they
the
were so
premiere.
attentive. They were sitting, I looked around. This is what I do always.
Yeah. Well, you guys
I
spoke amongst each other. So what were some of the things you heard?
No, I didn't spoke with anybody. I
think-
rushed to
Okay.
the bathroom. It was a
Well,
huge line.
first of all, during the show, everybody were very quiet and
Very
tuned
quiet
to
and
what's
completely.
going on. And when they came out, they spoke to Phelim, some of them. They asked each other how did they hear about it, and they were happy to come, and how everybody found out about it. They couldn't leave. They had to talk to each other a little bit to
Yeah.
tell them how they feel.
Yeah.
This was they took it very personally.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
it was very
Can you
touching.
get the press to come?
But
It's very difficult to get the press
Well,
in.
Well, tonight is the premiere, so there's going to be press there. Phelim had to run now because he has an interview with Reuters, and then I think Air America is another one. So there's going to be press. We're doing our best. We'll see. Yeah, we'll see.
I want to ask you
Yeah.
something about the part.
Sure.
Did you were you given the parts as they were written, or once you started to read the play, you changed parts and you said, I would like to be that, or somebody else would like
No. I was offered this specific part, and I stuck with this part. And I embraced it. I see this as my duty. When somebody comes to me with a project like this, I just say, yes, thank you. Whatever I can do, I see the service. Did what I normally do my research about it. I've been so engrossed in the events of everything that's been going on that I didn't have to dig in and catch up, I felt like I was right in the middle of it. Yeah, what I like about it is that it is verbatim. You don't, you just have to say the words. These are the words that they said.
Yeah.
And that's basically it. And leave it to the audience to it's basically just bearing testimony. It's just testimonials.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But you see,
which is why
a testimonial, but all of you were really so involved. So the energy that came out of each one of you, it was like I don't know, where did you dig? How deep is your well of emotions and memory to dig out all these reactions? It's unbelievable.
Well, not to disparage it, but I think that's just the work of an actor. You just build your entire instrument to kind of have a well that you can go to kind of find those emotions. And it's just really putting yourself in the situation, and it's running a sprint, a marathon. It starts, and for 90 minutes, your kind of, and it's nothing compared to what the people at the Nova Film Festival experience, or the people of Ofakim, where, you know, for 48 hours, that's what it was like. Just one thing to the next, you know, trying to survive. And I think the point that goes missing to me in terms of the debate about Israel, Palestine throughout the years, is that I think a lot of people who've never been to Israel don't understand it's not this weird, completely different culture. It is the West. It's a Western island in the middle of the Middle East. So when these people were attacked in their living rooms, it's like people in a suburb of Chicago being
How come
attacked.
people here
It's
are
like
not afraid that the Muslims will take over? How people don't think about it, that the Muslims can take over in Europe, take over
listen,
here.
this is a long, and I've been
Might be
researching
a plan
I've been
to take
researching this for
over.
a while.
Mentality.
To go back to what Phelim said, I would take it further back to the end of the Cold War. You know, another thing that a lot of people don't realize is that the entire Palestinian freedom movement was basically supported by Russia, by Iran. You know, I mean, Yasser Arafat studied in Moscow at the university. So they have their support from Russia, China, Iran, whereas Israel used to have its support from the West, America, Europe. With the end of the Cold War, I feel that the West, and particularly America, didn't have an enemy to fight anymore. So it started turning inward, started looking and picking up a lot of the ideological tropes that have become sort of passe, and pick them up again in academia in terms of, you know, post-colonialism, you know, the oppressor versus oppressed narrative, radical Marxism. All that became very fashionable again in academia, and predominantly on the left. And when I moved to Europe again, when I was 22, what I was shocked to see was how that the people who supported the Palestinians the most in, let's say, Berlin or whatever, wearing keffiyehs back then already, was the extreme left. And I was like, wait a second, you're against Nazis, but you're against Israel? It's like, it made no sense to me, you know? And I've just been seeing that more and more, this, we feel bad for what we did historically. So we have this, you know, there's a professor called Gaza from Montreal, I believe he's Lebanese Jewish, who said something called toxic empathy, where you feel so guilty that you want to make up for things that maybe is not even your fault. And unfortunately, there are certain bad actors that take advantage of that, that see that weakness in the West. Okay. There's also, you know, people ask me all the time, or in Israel, you know, you see the line between those Israelis that are more, would be considered more racist than, you know, it's usually more like the Mizrahi, the Sephardic Jews. Well, why? They speak Arabic. They understand what Arabs say. They lived amongst Arabs. They know how Arabs talk about Jews, you know? And it is a problem. It is a cultural problem that the West misunderstands and gets exploited by people who are extreme. It's not. Listen, there's also a big difference between Muslims who come from Indonesia, or which is the largest Islamic population in the world, which is not what a lot of people know. You have people from the Balkans that are Muslim. They talk very differently. Yeah. It is an ideological problem within the Arab world, and I'm not trying to be paint the broad brush here about all Arabs. Again, the West doesn't understand how multifaceted every culture is. They talk about things in these monolithic blocks, the Jews, the Arabs, but there's a lot of Christian Jews, Christian Arabs, and Arabs of all different persuasions. They don't all agree, but there is a problem within, you know, with extremism that is coming from these Arab lands, and it's become very unpopular, very unfashionable.
But I think if it will be part of the play, it might diminish the incredible impact it has.
Well, that's why it's not part of the play.
But it's not part of the play.
I'm saying
it's not part of the play.
No, I'm saying no. I think you meant in the beginning. Maybe it's kind of, this is like almost the weakness of the play, that it's not going back to some kind like the Cold War or wherever
No,
you
no,
start.
no, that
Let me,
Listen, the
opinion.
problem in the world, and I feel it is the problem in the world, to me, all problems, is not a problem between people. It's a problem of ideas. What
And you
people are
think it should be
really,
part
what
of the
people really
play?
hate each other for, I'm sorry?
You think it should be part of the play?
It should be part of the discussion and the debate, and that's not part of this play. This play literally, and
Right.
the intention of the author was to really just show these people
Got you,
and
yes.
let them speak. So they're not making any kind of commentary
Yeah.
other than
talking
their own
about a
personal
very
commentary.
different play now.
No, I
Very-
misunderstood. I thought that you meant that maybe something should be some reference in the play, and I agree with you.
Listen, that reference, that sort of contextualization should be part of the media, and it's not
sure,
anymore.
it's not at all.
Okay.
Not with the students, not on the campuses. They don't know what they're talking about, most of them.
Yes, and there's especially also there's something about you know, it really took a turn when Donald Trump was elected, that the left, that to me always was responsible for holding the center, kind of gave way to their extreme wing, and that people who had moderate voices, whether they were in corporations, whether they're in media, whether they're in academia, were literally silenced. I don't even have a problem with people's extreme points of views, as long as you don't try to silence me.
Right. No, you're
Okay,
right.
let's have a debate.
Yes, you're
That's
right.
the whole point. When you try to bully me or coerce me into silence, you're no longer, in my opinion, being liberal. You're no longer being interested. You're basically a tyrant, you know. And it doesn't matter if you're a tyrant on the left or a tyrant on the right. It's the same
I
thing.
think if you are able to get into places with this play, the discussion will come out after the play. People will come out and will discuss. They will have to somehow put it in
I'm not sure.
No?
I'm not sure because it
I
will
admire your
weaken the play.
optimism,
no.
but
It
yeah,
will
I
weaken
don't.
the play.
The
René,
division is so, yeah.
Can you tell us a few words about the director?
Jeffrey Cantor is a fellow colleague. He's an actor as well, and I believe, but he's directed before. He's directed, I think, 3 or 4 different projects. I was very touched for the reasons why he came aboard to do this. He was a leader of our group, and he immediately made clear that his reasons for doing this play had nothing to do with politics, but was just about talking about these people's experiences. Right. And that he, as a Jew, was just as shocked as the rest of us about the reaction to this horrific event. And that those voices needed to be heard. And the fact that, again, those voices are silenced. That's the issue here. Yeah. Okay. The issue is that the victims, how can you tear down posters of babies that are kidnapped and claim, well, this is just divisive? Divisive? You know, I mean, what you're doing is divisive, you know? I never in my adult life have I witnessed anything like this. Right. And so it's the silencing. It's trying to deny Israelis, regardless of whether they're Israeli, their right to mourn, their right to victimhood. And apparently everything we talk about today is victimhood, you know? But then when people are actual victims, we selectively choose which victims we will allow to speak and which ones need to be silenced. Yeah. That's not okay. Be consistent. My issue today politically is just be consistent. Yeah, you're right. If you make a claim, then use that for everyone equally, you know?
René, good luck tonight.
Good luck. It was really very
I hope you can show it as many times.
Yeah, very effective.
As needed.
Extremely effective.
And
yeah,
and I love what you guys are doing. Thank you for having me on the podcast.
Yeah, it was wonderful.
And and continuing to, you know, show and bring to attention a lot of Jewish art and Israeli culture in New York.
Yeah.
Appreciate
Good luck.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye, everybody.
Week.
Thank
Bye,
you, Tzili. Bye.
All right.
Wow.
Take care.